Hi, Jens.
Hi, Ben. The reason I contacted you is because I once wrote for another online music magazine, which was called Soundbase Online. And I think it was when No Push Collide was released, like 2003, I guess, that
Yeah,
I reviewed the CD. And I was
really?
really, it was one of my, I don't know, top 5 albums of all the time I wrote for the magazine.
Oh, thank you,
And
Jens.
yeah, so a couple of months I stumbled upon your work, and I thought, yeah, maybe it's interesting to talk to you and
You
get an
stumbled
idea
across what, sorry?
the music you're doing now.
Oh, cool.
So, and yeah, my first question would be if I'm correct, or if my research was correct, you released like 12 albums and a couple of other things with several bands. And I don't know, you always like chose different band names. Is there a reason for that? Why didn't you try to like establish one name?
Well, it gets a bit complicated, but I, I guess if I can change your question a
Yeah,
little bit
never mind.
to, I think what you might be getting at is why, I mean, to me, it was always a matter of either it's a band or it's a solo project.
Yeah.
And I never went for a solo project that directly linked to my name until quite recently, well, last year or 2 years ago. So I just never felt that it was time or that it made sense. I don't know why. But for songwriting, it's always important, I think, for me anyway, to have the right vehicle for the songs. And that could be it could be one other musician, it could be 3 other musicians, it could be 4, could be 5, whatever. And it was only, well, actually I did do a lot of stuff on my own in my bedroom, just bedroom demos or whatever, and I released them because I like lo-fi stuff as well. And I called it, I didn't give that my real name, I gave it the name Young Sawbones, because I like that name. And it was a good vehicle to just hide under and just do something that was interesting. And I always found solo artists not particularly interesting, or it was hard to be interesting. You know, I do love a lot of them, and I just thought I'm not good enough. I probably thought I was not good enough to be Ben Fox-Smith, because I'm not as good as Tom Waits, I'm not as good as Elliott Smith, I'm not as good as Nick Drake, I'm not as good as John Lennon, you know. And so I thought, well, I can't be Ben Fox-Smith, you know. I didn't even think I would ever be Ben Fox-Smith. So I think it got to the point where I thought, well, I'm as good as I'm ever going to be, you know, or I think I'm good enough now to have my name on things. So it's probably a matter of confidence.
Okay. So you relied strongly on the input of the other guys.
That's probably, yeah, probably. I also do enjoy, well, until recently, I do enjoy other people, you know, in the rehearsal room and in the studios, and I enjoy the camaraderie as much as the musical things that happen. I've always been, I don't know, I write the songs as finished as possible, and then I give them to people, and there's a limit to how much they've been able to do, and they've all been fantastic at finding the place to, you know, to stop being creative or to start being creative. I don't give that much leeway, but I do need them. I think I needed them for support, creative as well as moral support.
Okay.
So because they've always been friends, and it's always been important to me to be with friends. There was this one time when I was asked to fire one of my bandmates by a producer, and instead of the musician in question, they wanted to get a session musician, and that was just anathema to me. That was not cool at all. You don't do that in my world. So I needed the moral support of friends, I think, you know.
Okay.
I couldn't handle, it was never really fully about the music or the, you know, it was always a mixture, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, doesn't it? I mean, it can happen that you like evolve or get better, and you have a band, and somebody is like kind of the weak link or the weak. Have you never been in the situation where you thought, okay, in order to?
Yeah, a few times, but that's not been because the guy wasn't good enough. I think it was to do with something else. You know, it was the X factor that you need, or the friendship perhaps that you need, was not there. It's not. I've never been. You know, I never replaced someone for a more session or more brilliant musician. I don't. You know, if I did, then it was an accident, or it was a different kind of musician.
Yeah.
It was. You know, I wouldn't. Yeah. I mean, because session musicians, I don't have that much experience of them, but I just don't like the idea of them. So I wouldn't, you know, wouldn't go down that route. So to answer your question, yeah, I've been in that position. It's a horrible position to be in, especially when when the foundation is a friend thing. So I've delayed those decisions to timing that is as good as possible.
Yeah, I mean, another thing is when I compare the music you're doing now to the music you were doing back then, at least in my perception, it's like it kind of evolved from a more angry, grungy sound to, I mean, some of the new songs for me sounded a little like old Pink Floyd records or something like that, and sometimes that doesn't go along with, or some people doesn't want to evolve the same way you want it to be. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's tough. Also, you're limited when you're in bands, especially when you're in small bands. You're limited to limited production value in the studio or live, and particularly live. Anger is quite easy to portray live, you know, so you can quite easily, you know, have distorted guitars and stuff like that. But it's harder if you're in a subtle band. It's harder to do. You have to be a better musician, and that's where that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a better musician who could be in a band like Pink Floyd, where there is very little distorted guitars, and I wanted to be able to play an acoustic show and it sound good as well. So yeah, I have chosen kind of easy options. It's, you know, to get in a studio and bash out 10 fast kind of distorted angry songs, even if they're good, you know, or very good, is a lot easier than I'm not one to stop a band in the middle of a song going, oh, that's not quite right, and I want this, can you turn the treble up on that, and blah blah blah. That's not it at all for me. So, but now it is. Now on my own, I can design things how I want. And then afterwards, I can hire musicians who are also friends. I've got this good place where I can hire musicians who are session musicians as well as band musicians, who will do what I like, and I pay them a small amount for expenses, and we play live. And to me, it sounds like the album that I've made. You know, it's like a replica of the album, rather than making an album that's a replica of live. It's the other way around. It's wonderful. Yeah.
But can you maybe say something about your own or personal main musical influences? Because I think it's very interesting for, if you like a band, where are they coming from? And sometimes you can like discover new music and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I kind of named about 5 solo artists who are extremely well known. There are less well known influences. You mentioned grungy stuff, and a few bands don't ever get mentioned in my mind, and that's Girls Against Boys and Jesus Lizard. But I've kind of moved away from that a little bit, but not entirely, because you can hear beyond the noise of Girls Against Boys, you can hear lots of melody and lots of musical ideas, and you know, bands like that, and English bands like Jacob's Mouse I still listen to, who were early 90s, very small band. And I heard a bit of Millionaire, the Belgian band, the other day, and I've listened to them for a very long time, and they're very interesting. Another Belgian band, Deus, they're really interesting, you know, and they're all the kind of old ones. But nowadays, because I'm studying a lot of classical and jazz music in my studies. There was some, really going off on tangents, you know, listening to a lot of weird and great music by people who I've never heard of from the 18th century onwards, really.
Okay.
But what's influencing me directly now is quite tricky. I just recorded a song here. What does it sound like? I kind of, like you say, I kind of, Pink Floyd are a huge influence. And also sounds a bit like Wilco at times. But I try and find my own thing, really. You know, in the end, that's the point. There's another good band called Blonde, something Blonde. A bit like Deerhoof, but English. I think Deerhoof are American. But there are so many. In my old age, I forget the names of so many bands so many albums that I love, because there are just too many.
I mean, for me, it's a little like when you're young, you listen to very large amounts of music, and sometimes you close and don't discover so much new stuff, which is sometimes very sad.
Yeah. That's why I study it, because it forces you to listen. And I think as a teenager, you listen so naturally and so intently that it gets your soul, if you like. And so you have to, as an older person, I think you have to put in effort, you know, to get your mind working and to take it in, because a lot of it is production value as well. You don't like the production techniques that are used these days, for instance. I find it extremely difficult to enjoy any pop music these days because of the production techniques that are very obvious, you know, they're very strong. And that's the same. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't have liked Nirvana, for instance, because the production is very strong. It's very, you know, different maybe from what people are used to, and it just puts you off immediately. And that's a failure of mine that I accept. I'm not going to listen intently to modern pop music. I'm not going to give it enough. I'm not going to give it the time.
Okay.
You know, I accept that.
I sometimes feel like, I mean, maybe that sounds like the old guy complaining about everything's changing, but back like 20 years ago or so, you bought a record and you kind of had to listen to all the stuff and not just picking this song, and you know, sometimes some songs get good after you heard them 5 times or 7 times and not the first time.
Yeah, so many things have just come through my head. There's so many angles to that. The main one, or the first one that came up, was that it's always been going in that direction since the 50s, probably. Or maybe even it was strong in the 50s that singles were and have always been, I suppose. I mean, look at karaoke. You know, nowadays it's always singles. But the thing about those things, I mean, I don't know if I should go on that tangent, but yeah, albums, I mean, from the 70s, I suppose, albums became 60s, 70s, albums became more and more. And for me, I agree with you that there's an aura about a band or an album that you can't get from just listening to one song and moving on. That's just, it's just the way it is there. I mean, I don't know about pop albums these days. Do they even make albums? Do pop bands make albums?
Do you know this guy, Rick Beato, the YouTube guy?
Yeah.
And I watched like an episode where he like said something about the top 10 alternative charts, and it was all like, this is completely pop music to me, and like overproduced and everything on the grid and auto-tune, and I don't know if there's something like alternative music or indie music.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I've thought that myself, because I subscribe to Apple Music, and they suggest they as you know, they give you playlists of things that they think you'll like, or they'll say, here, or it won't even be specific to you. It will just be their alternative playlist. And I've done the same thing. I've listened to it and thought, oh my God, this is what they call alternative. This is outrageous, unbelievable. That's uber mainstream. Mainstream has become even bigger than it ever was.
I mean, for me, it's sometimes like, I think the structure of the song and the harmonies are, for me, are really boring because it's always the same time. But on the other hand, sometimes the production and it rings here and there, and that for me sometimes it's interesting. And I mean, if you listen to the Billie Eilish record or something, then you can discover something, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some clever things going on for sure. Sure, I haven't given Billie Eilish that much time. It's just a matter of time. I'm sure you're correct. There are things to enjoy.
Can you maybe say something about your songwriting process? Do you start always the same? Is like there's a guitar riff in the beginning or some lyrics? How does it work for you?
It's mostly, I mean, I've experimented with all sorts of different ways. Well, perhaps not that many, but a few in my mind. And essentially the best, for me, the most successful stuff that I like best comes from a kind of fully formed song, or at least a verse that I can play on acoustic guitar to, not necessarily the lyrics though. The lyrics can wait. I like to wait quite a long time actually to write the lyrics, but and then I can it's kind of goes round and round a little bit as well. Like, so once you've established one kind of version of it, so say I record the vocals last, that might suggest that I should do the guitar again, or something like that, or the drums again, or the keyboard again, or something. So it's a bit of a loop round and round kind of thing. And
you do all the instruments by yourself, is that right?
Yeah, well, at the moment, yeah. I mean, the last album I did do that, and I went into the studio with musicians to re-record everything. So they recorded everything again.
Oh, okay.
That was a new way to do it, which kind of worked. Didn't work as well. Oh, did it? I'm not sure. It's not something I'll probably repeat. I'll probably just try and use musicians live, and probably won't record them again. I'll probably do everything myself. Just because there's always something not wrong, but different. And, sometimes that's really good, but not that often. I usually have a very set, in the writing process, I've decided on everything. So when someone comes in and does something slightly different, it's usually not something that I like. Okay. So I'll just do it myself. From now on, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, I mean, I do music myself, and I recorded an album now too. And I think it's always like some songs turn out much better than you thought, and some are like get completely worse. And most of the time, it's the songs you really thought are the best, you're like a little bit disappointed.
It's Sod's Law, it's called in English. It's like, the one that you think is the single gets completely ruined, and no one likes it.
That's even more frustrating. Yeah.
But that's okay. At least you get replacements.
Do you know about music theory as well?
I do know about music theory, but I don't employ it very much. I think that is a very strange way to write songs that I consider from the heart. To some degree, I'm emo. I'm pretty emo. I think I just have to accept that. But if you ask a professional music composer for, say, television or film, they employ theory, or even if, a professional composer of any sort, as far as I can tell, you can't not employ theory. That's what they do all the time. And I find it very restrictive emotionally. It's just all, just doesn't work for me, for my solo stuff, for the music that I make. You know, it doesn't work. You know, you can't put emotion into a tonic and a dominant. You know, or you, once you've decided, oh, I'm going to do tonic and dominant, I think that kind of ruins the atmosphere. You know? Yeah, but you know, that's just personal decision.
Kind of narrows down the path you can go, right? Or is it?
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe.
I think it just sucks. This thing is just crap. If you imagine going into, you know, because I was brought up on grunge and stuff like that, and the theory of grunge, you know, of Nirvana songs, or the musical theory of Jesus Lizard is so brilliant,
yeah,
that you couldn't design it from the theory into the band. Yeah. I don't think. But the guitar, you know, the guitarist knows his theory for sure, and I'd love to know what he thought at the time or even now. I don't know how much he uses it, but yeah, in my mind, you couldn't know the theory of Jesus Lizard and then employ it for, that's right, I keep saying employ it, but then record, then talk to the bassist, talk to the drummer, and discuss the music in terms of theory, and then make the Jesus Lizard album. That's insane to me. You know, it just doesn't, that did not happen. I think it's the other way around, I think, is that you write what you like, and then people can analyze it later if they want to. You know? It's just what sounds good. If something sounds good to me, then that's it. I don't, you know, some people might go, well, that can't sound good because that's against the principles of Bachian harmony. You know, you can't do that. And actually, studying some Bachian harmony recently, I've discovered that all the music I like does break all the rules of Baroque music, for sure. And I think that's really funny. Everything is, you know, there's this rule, I don't know if you're aware of the rule of parallel fifths or parallel octaves. They're very complicated. They get more complicated than that. But everything in rock music is parallel. You know, power chords with guitars or whatever, they're all but they're called the opposite of Baroque music. And so studying it is really interesting because you just find out the reality of the situation, which is there is no theory in the music that I like. You know, you can, and I don't want to be a critic who writes, you know, about albums. Actually, I did do a couple of reviews of bands, and I couldn't help but put theory in there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I couldn't help it, but yeah, it was just something to say, I suppose. And it sounds like, you know, it is academic. I mean, writing about music is an academic pursuit, so you have to use theory. You can't, unless you're writing about it in a purely kind of poetic, almost poetic fashion. You know, and you're just using interesting references, you know, and stuff like that. But yeah, so to answer your question, I think theory is very interesting, but I would not use it for songwriting. Do
you get inspiration from other kind of art forms?
I think there's a direct link between reading, mostly novels, but poetry as well, or anything really. I do kind of any non-fiction too, perhaps. I'm not sure, but any reading, I think, possibly has a direct link in the brain. I think it just churns over in a positive way that spills into songwriting. I'm not absolutely sure about that, but I think that's the case. Same with art. I think visual art has a conducive effect as well. This is nothing new, I'm sure. Yeah. Inspiration. I think, I don't know. Yeah. Difficult to say what inspires me now. I'm kind of a self perpetuating. I try and inspire myself, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever thought about like doing another approach of writing music? I mean, what I experienced myself was like, okay, I always like write something on the guitar, and maybe that's boring always to start with the same thing. Just start with the bass, or maybe ask the drummer, do you got a cool beat, and then build upon that?
Yeah, I've made yeah, I think a whole album or two. His songs here and there, I've definitely used. I just use a bass line. It's a different kettle of fish, if you pardon the weird expression. It really has a very different vibe. And when I do that, it sounds like the only way I can bring it together is with the vocal. I find it difficult to, because like I say, I'm quite emo.
Yeah.
I think the vocal really makes it understandable to me as a thing that I've made. I've tried very cold ways of writing music, and I think a whole album called a solo album. What was it called? It wasn't Blue Light Plants. Floods it was called. And it was about 7 songs of mostly electronic sounds. And I did it to see if I could make music that I liked that had no vocal on it. And I did. I did like it. Yeah. There's a lot it was a headache. And I don't think anyone else likes it, but I liked it, and it was a good experiment.
And you run your own indie label.
Yeah, I release everything myself. I mean, I can, anyone can release digitally now directly, which is really nice, because there's no, I wonder what it would have been like when I was 17 or when I was first signed with this day and age, with MP3s and those abilities. You don't need record labels. I still want a record label, but only a particular kind. Generally, my experiences of them have been frustrating, but that, I'm not the only one. But I am grateful, very grateful, that I've been able to release on scales that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. And these days, it would be nice to sell more records through my own label, and that's the idea. Obviously, that's everyone's idea. But it is cool to have your own production house. And now I can record pretty to a very high standard at home, and I can release and make artwork and promote it all in the way that I like, that I want. And it's all quite fun. Yeah.
How can a band end up on your label? Or how does it work?
So far, I don't go and find bands that I like and try and sign them to the label, because I can't really offer them much. I'm not like a few labels actually. They don't offer money, up front like they used to. They used to give you in advance. But they do offer, channels, and I don't really, channels of media channels. I don't really, it's not really a label like that. It's not really a label to try and make successful. I don't really want to make the label successful per se. I kind of want to make myself happy, which means
that's good.
My YouTube channel only has my stuff on it, So I'd have to, if I went down the other route, then I'd have to have a label channel, and I think it'd be a lot more work. And I just feel, I've got enough on my plate at the moment. So how it works is the only people on my label are friends who just want somewhere to put their music, and I can put it, because they're more lazy than even me, I can put it on. I can release it digitally for them, and I can put it on Bandcamp, and I can send it to bloggers and journalists, not journalists, it's bloggers mostly, and playlists, and Spotify people. But that's all I can do. So I haven't had many requests, and so I released my brother quite a lot, and I released a couple of other friends. Yeah, couple of other old friends of mine, and I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've seen you've been active on this Submit Hub, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell something about what you think are the kind of most important channels to one, sell records, and the second thing, promote records?
To sell the channels to sell records. God.
I mean, you're on Bandcamp. I've seen that, and
Yeah. I think Bandcamp's really good. I don't. I'm not completely up to date with everything. I've kind of been on Bandcamp for a long time, and iTunes and Spotify obviously have been around for a long time now, and Deezer or whatever, which I don't use, but my website, whatever you call it, what's it called? Something House. It's called I use awal.com, AWAL, who I've used for a long time as well. And they've been bought out, I think, by Sony now, which is unfortunate. And they're good. That's fine. I do recommend them. They're good. What was I saying? What was I thinking? Yeah, Submit Hub is kind of my main thing I go to, as well as if I have personal relationships with people, I send it to them as well. But yeah, well, I found Submit Hub on my own. No one really recommended it, and I thought, is this a con? Is this just gonna get me nowhere? But it's been really good. I highly recommend it to people.
Okay.
I think it's reasonably priced. I think it's easy to understand. It's easy to use, and apart from the negative comments that you pay for, I don't do that. I don't want comments, negative comments, because I don't know. I'm just too emotionally sensitive to deal with them. But I think it's just a good system. I hope they continue. I'll certainly use them every time I release things. I think it's really good. I don't know of any others. I was looking for a long time to find ways of penetrating, indie music, because in my whole life I've always been into smaller bands and more interesting music, and for what I deem more interesting music, and it's hard to find. And if you've just got the internet, maybe it's not hard to find. I just haven't been able to find it. To find where it's happening seems to be quite difficult. But on the other hand, it just seems like there are loads and loads of websites. I don't know how big or small, and there's also the nature of the internet, which is difficult to trust, sometimes I find, so yeah, Submit Hub, I do trust, and I think it really does go to real people who really listen to the music, and they don't just take the money. They can't. They're actually not allowed to. No. So it's good. Don't really have much else to say on that.
I always have the impression that these days, in order to be successful, you have to be in some kind sensational, do something very. You will be the super musician, but at least it has to. It's not enough to just make good music.
Well, for me, I think it is enough to make good music, and that's it. I don't want to, so far, and I don't think I ever will, get into performing on YouTube and having my own channel in which I show myself and show the inner workings, interesting or otherwise, and try and make money through YouTube, which seems to be a way to do it. I'm not very into Instagram either. I do use it, and I use them both, but it's only to actually just have a platform to offer. It's just an offering. It's not to try and lure you with tricks and analytics, and all that nonsense. I mean, for me, it's nonsense, and it's not just, that's not nonsense. It's just not. I don't think it's for musicians. I don't think musicians should do that.
It's much work. It's a part that's not fun.
Indeed, and if that means failure, then I'm happy with that. That's fine.
Okay. Now I see all those nice instruments on your wall, and I think you're even you still play the white. What is it? A Jaguar or Jazz Master?
Mustang. Yeah, it's from my Nirvana days. Yeah. Yeah.
This do you have like a main instrument or?
Yeah, well, it's really hard because as you can see, this is my Miami music room, and I've had these guitars for a very long time. If I want a new guitar, I have to get rid of an old guitar, and
Okay.
that's very difficult. And I don't think I'm going to do that. So I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, I just love them very much. This acoustic, which is really battered, I'm going to try and get it put together, but it's almost impossible. It's so broken. But I still use it because it's just, you know, when an instrument, it just fits you, you know, like a piece of clothing.
Yeah.
You don't want to get rid of it ever because it's just perfect, you know. And you wear it every day, and there's nothing better. You know? Except, I mean, I just want to show off this thing because I've got this desk here, and look, wow.
Oh, yeah, nice.
So
I
I feel
only got
very.
this year.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm proper now.
And that's the place you are recording too?
Yeah, I've just moved here, and I've set everything up as best I can to be conducive to recording and writing. So I'm gonna have keyboard recording stuff here, and then a synth there, hopefully. Amp down here, microphone here, a couple of microphones. Very simple, but I want quality as well. Simple and quality and easy to use. I don't want to get really, you know how there are loads of people on YouTube particularly who have enormous amounts of gear that looks fantastic. But I know that if I used that, if I had all that, I would never write a song in my life. There's no way I would get all that to work really quickly, you know, because you got to work quickly. You can't be messing with wires, and you know what computers are like. There are always problems. So you want to limit that as much as possible.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, there are people that really like this technical stuff. I hate it as
yeah.
well. I need just at least it has to work, and then it's okay. I mean, but you're not using like DI signals. You're like putting a microphone in front of an amp and.
Yeah, I'm doing things properly. You know, so all the mics go through a preamp before the converter. You know, you know, that's, and I didn't want to do that, but I have to do that if I want to release stuff. You know, from here, then it has to sound it just sounds better. You know,